So after you explained to me, oh yeah, that's an annuity, I thought, what? No one told me that. I had no idea.
Recently, a client stopped by our offices to share her experience with annuities. This one's a bit longer than my usual videos, but it's a first-hand explanation of predatory sales, the lack of transparency on high fees, and separately the high commissions that pit annuity salespeople against your best interests as a teacher. So without further ado, I'd like you to meet Liz. We've known each other a while, haven't we?
You could say that.
You could say that.
Safely.
So, for full disclosure, you are my sister, and you're a teacher on the East Coast.
Yes.
And your main subjects are?
Journalism, and I also teach creative writing and social media.
And do the yearbook.
I'm the yearbook advisor. I do the student website and also the literary magazine. So lots of writing, lots of editing, tons and tons of grading.
And when you first joined your district, what was the retirement landscape? What was there a pension, and were there supplemental plans?
Okay, so after I had been teaching for a year, I understood, okay, now you can do a pension plan, but also contribute to what I thought of as a 401k, having been in the corporate world, which actually is different, as you know, right? And so I went to, annual enrollment and was told that for the 401k version, I had one option.
Okay.
And so I signed up for it. And I remember at the time talking with a teacher. He'd been a teacher for a number of years. And I said to him, oh, so what do you do with your plan? And he said, oh, I don't need a plan. I have a pension. Why would I need to have a plan? And I thought,
yeah,
okay, not what I would do, because, how do you know if the state eventually down the road is going to go belly up? How do you know if there's going to be a pension down the road, or it could be cut? And so I've always been a firm believer to save as much as I possibly could. But based on what we were offered at the time, it was just that one option.
And what happened at that point?
You kept asking me questions, and because I don't specialize in this, he's like, do you have a 457 or a 403B? I'm like, I don't know. I, contribute a fair amount of money every single month into something.
Yeah.
And so as we started talking about it more, I realized at that point in time I was in an annuity, which I had no idea. Yeah. I knew enough to know I did not want to be in an annuity, even though I was. And I knew that primarily because my husband is in insurance.
What was our experience when we started pulling on that string and seeing what we could do in your district?
Yeah, and it was so jumbled. I'm even trying to remember.
Yeah.
It was a nightmare, really.
Yeah.
It was. I wasn't asking for much. I just wanted to be able to reach someone who could give me straight answers. Everybody's very nice, great, but I felt like I was constantly being given the runaround.
Yeah.
And that's where you came in, and just such relief that I knew if I had a question, I could pick the phone and get someone who would give me advice, not some nameless person who, like, you were saying, it could be a different person every time.
Sure.
Who doesn't understand my individual circumstances, and let alone that I could actually reach them in a timely fashion. So yeah, that was huge. Even things as simple as, I know there was, before you and I started talking, there was a point in time where I started researching things within my district. And by then I could see there were some other options, but sometimes things would be presented, and everybody's well-meaning, I think, but in a way where, okay, I'm being referred to someone who I think is going to be objective, and then I start asking questions and realize, oh no, they're just another vendor who wants to sell me a different annuity. And I'm like, I just want someone who can give me the big picture, and I could never find that. I could never get that information.
Yeah. So from from year 1 or 2, you've had a 457.
Right.
And then when I got involved, we added a 403B because I would be able to manage it
Right.
for you. And the 403B that we used had, I think, 150 different funds available, including Vanguard funds, which are really inexpensive. But it allowed us to be more tactical in responding to what was happening in the market, whereas the 457 plan only had maybe 30 choices on the investment menu.
If that, I think
Yeah,
it was
if
less than that.
Um,
Well, and then there was the fee issue. Because then we started looking into it, and on my statement, which I would get quarterly, it said no fees. But then I took a picture of all those
Yes.
and I faxed it to you. And what did you
Yes.
say?
All year long, page 1 was saying there were no fees collected
Right.
this quarter.
But the bottom line was I was being charged fees.
You were.
Yeah.
And it was
And they were pretty high, too, based on what you were
Yeah.
saying.
And it was being pulled out of your funds in a way that they wouldn't have to list the fee
Right.
on the statement.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, it was a high fee 457, but I would imagine if you met with someone from that company, they would point to page 1 and say, see, there's no fees
Well,
that you're paying.
I can remember speaking with someone at the school board office.
Yeah.
And then like, oh no, it says there's no fees. But there was another charge, which was in effect a fee.
Yeah.
It wasn't maximizing my money,
True.
which was a shock. It was a big shock. It makes me say how much more could I have earned had they not been taking that many fees out, which I wasn't aware of all these years.
Yeah. Once you turned that triggering age, I don't know if we want to say what it is.
We can.
We can. It's 59 and a half.
Right.
That's when we were allowed to roll the 457 to an IRA for you. And that opened the floodgates of what your options could be,
Right.
what choices to invest in. You weren't stuck to a menu of 30 choices anymore. You know, those assets now could invest in anything that an IRA could invest in.
Right, which is huge because, my husband has his own account. We have some other separate IRAs. And so, I've always, for example, been kind of a fan of Vanguard and other groups like that. And that was a huge limiting factor with what I was in because I just didn't have access to any of that.
Yeah.
So having more access to a variety of different things to me is huge. Being able to pick up the phone and contact someone, get the same person every time,
Yes.
which is huge. You don't
Yeah.
realize how huge that is. Who knows my personal situation. I'm not a nameless person to them. They, you know what my goals are, not just because we're related, but because, you're doing this for me and advising me. And so you know what my goals are. You know what my risk level is, which
Yes.
is very important. And then being able to do the things that I can't do. I mean, in theory, if I wanted to, I suppose I could research financial stuff all day long and learn more than I have. And I feel like I'm probably more educated financially than the average person, but that still doesn't mean that this is remotely my area of specialization, and I don't have the time for that.
No.
I need someone who specializes, who can look at the market, like with everything that's going on this week,
Sure.
in the news, and say, I'm recommending you do this. I'm recommending you do that. I mean, it's like I wouldn't, if I have a medical issue, I don't want to. I'm not saying I've never looked anything up online, but I recognize that I need someone who specializes in a medical condition because this is not what I focus on.
Sure.
And so it's a huge relief having someone who does this for a living, who I believe has my best interests at heart and who I can reach. That's huge, absolutely huge.
And really, any fiduciary advisor could do this for you.
Right.
There's 100,000 of us nationwide.
Hmm.
You, I mean, we're several time zones apart,
Hmm.
but we've known each other a long time.
Right.
So it was kind of a natural for me to serve as your fiduciary.
Right.
But there are people in your state who could do this for you.
Well, and I'll say this: I tried that route.
Really?
I did try that route because we didn't even know if you could get appointed in Virginia. You
Yeah.
weren't when we started talking about this. You are
True.
now. But I did try going through the usual channels, which was the school board, and they gave me various different names that I could contact. But again, I don't know these people from Adam. The Pretty much all of them were trying to sell me another annuity, which by that point in time, having talked to you, I now understood what I wanted to avoid.
Yeah.
And I just didn't feel like I was getting someone who was there to advise me of the big picture. These are all your options, as opposed to, I want to sell you this.
Yes.
And I get that because my husband sells Medicare insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things he struggles with, particularly this time of year, is, you see all these ads and contacting seniors saying, oh, you can switch this on Medicare, and people call you up, from an 1-800 number, and, oh, you should switch to this plan. Those people don't give a darn who you are.
Yeah.
They're trying to sell a plan that probably will give them the best commission
Mm-hmm.
and not what is best for you.
Yeah.
And so again, having someone who you can trust, who has your best interests at heart, is huge, and it really creates a great peace of mind that I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
So I can get back to my grading and my lesson planning, which is that's my focus.
That's your focus.
Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
And that's what we want.
Right.
Thanks for listening to the first part of this interview. If you found it at all helpful, please hit subscribe so you don't miss part 2, which is much shorter and explores the great wall many teachers run into when trying to contact their provider. It's a huge source of frustration, and we discuss how teachers can avoid it. Until next time, have a great school year.